You know, they're saying it takes a long time for it to happen. Well, there's a lot of long time things happening real quick lately these days. Ring of Fire is really popping off. We're seeing, I'm monitoring things. I mean, right now, Nemesis is coming through our system like the mother of all cue balls. And it's knocking everything. You know, just think about, you know, you see somebody who's really good at playing pool and they break the rack, you know, and balls going everywhere. Well, that's what's happening. And that's the reason why, you know, I believe we're going to see super bolide events, and then we're going to, you know, all it's going to take is one really good impact event, and that is the massive game changer.
Looking out into the vastness of the universe, the greatest mystery is right here, right under our feet. The ultimate aim of all science, to penetrate the unknown. These are the stories that will make you say, what the fuck?
The last thing I did was in my science video in last year, and in that what I'm doing is I am forecasting that we are going to have a super bolide event first quarter of this year. And the interesting thing is that I just got in the data for December, and man, it just keeps, you know, the bad news just keeps coming. The data that we saw was through the month of November, and everything is just upticking. It has been for the last 3 years. Actually, what we show, if you the video is signs number 13, meteor warning for first quarter 2017. And so what I really wanted to do with this was I like to give people news they can use, and as opposed to straight validation reporting. What I call validation reporting is, look at this, look at that, 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 look at that, look at this, look at this, look at that, and it goes on. And you know what I mean? It's almost like a Facebook addiction. And you know, now they're finding out that people spend all day on Facebook wind up more depressed than not. So I'm going, hey, you know, if you know bad news is coming, why fixate on it? You know, I mean, Planet X to me is like Amtrak. It'll get here when it gets here, but it'll get here. Okay. And in the meantime, it's preparing yourself for what's going to come mentally, and being aware of key signs. And you know, what I do in the video is I actually, as I was looking at fireball and meteor reporting, the hard thing I think for a lot of people is if they're trying to self-educate themselves. You know, you look at the definitions, what is an asteroid, what is this, what is that? And like Harry Truman said about economists, if you took all these science sites and laid them end to end, they point in every direction. And so what I decided to do with this was not only present the statistical data about a impending super bolide event first quarter of this year, but I also wanted to give the viewers a lexicon of basic terminology so that they could, when they're going through news reports, they could sort through the things that they need to red flag and things that are not a huge concern. And when we're talking about shooting stars, fireballs, bolides, super bolides, the event that occurred over Russia, and actually I talk about this extensively in my video. And again, for your listeners, and that's signs number 13, meteor warning for first quarter 2017. A super bolide is different from a bolide. Bolides, whether it's a regular bolide or a super bolide, are different from fireballs because a bolide will have a detonation event. And a super bolide is one that is going to have, once it gets from, you know, a bolide is going to detonate, you'll see it. But if a super bolide detonates, you're going to have shock waves, sound, bright flash, and so forth. Now, the Chelyabinsk, which happened in February 15th, 2013, was a super bolide event. When it detonated over Chelyabinsk, or actually it detonated beyond Chelyabinsk over an unpopulated region, which was fortunate for them because it was what I call a 30-30 event. It released as much energy as 30 Hiroshima atomic bombs, and when it detonated, it was momentarily 30 times brighter than the sun. 1,500 people were injured primarily from flying glass. They were standing at their windows looking at this, and the shock wave blew the glass into their face. But also a lot of people, because of the bright flash, had burns on their bodies and retinal burns. And so out of 1,500 people, you really got to wonder how many people were actually blinded in one or both eyes during this event. And so that is a particular concern. And that's the thing I'm worried about, is that in the first quarter of this year, the statistical trend data is indicating that we're at a high risk of another Super Bowl-like event. Now, Chelyabinsk did not happen directly over a city. But imagine if a Chelyabinsk meteor, which was 17 meters in diameter, okay, so this thing was a pretty good sized rock. And let's imagine you have a 17-meter wide Super Bowl-like detonating directly above New York, London, Paris, Rome. Now you're going to have a whole nother kind of disaster scenario, one where there could be substantial and major loss of life. And what we did was we've been tracking trends, and we started this with an article that we wrote back in 2015. J.P. Jones did it, and because we were following the work of another Planet X researcher who was trying to figure out the calendaring mix-up, because when people follow Zecharia Sitchin's 3,600-year orbit, they seem to, they can't get the dots to connect. And then what happened is, we were reading the book, The Lost Book of Enki by Sitchin, which is the autobiography of Lord Enki of the Anunnaki, who is the creator of our species. If you read the book, it literally says we came from the man's loins. And, not because he was a particularly noble guy. He would just look at Earth girls and say, I want to get me some of that. And boom, here we are. And if you read that, it reads more like Game of Thrones with horny aliens and spaceships. And still the same, though, in there, it says that the very first calendar ever created for our planet was created by Lord Enki, and it was a lunar calendar. And it had 2 seasons, summer and winter. And so when you look back historically, lunar calendars are the predominant way of measuring time. And the Gregorian calendar that we use today is really a political mashup invented by the church. And that's the reason why we have leap years, and we got to recalculate, and holidays don't fall on the same days and things like that, because it's a mishmash calendar. However, when we went back and we said, okay, 3,600 Gregorian years or 3,600 lunar years, and because Sitchin was translating the Sumerian text, we said lunar years. And the minute we did that, correlated it with Gregorian calendar, then all of a sudden events just snapped into place. Click, 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 click. But at the same time, we began wondering, well, since we're doing this calendar stuff, lunar versus Gregorian, what about Mayan calendar? Because that's the most precise calendar ever created by man. And I can remember, back in the lead up to 2012, and there was all the hullabaloo about, like the movies, golly gee, all the cable programs, 2012 programs. And I even, back in August of 2012, I was interviewed by National Geographic, and the producer asked me, he said, do you see a direct correlation between December 21, 2012 and Planet X? And at the time I said, no, I don't see any correlation. And then he said, well, what are you going to be doing on December 21, 2012? And I said, well, I'm going to make coffee. And I take my coffee real seriously. And so he didn't like either of those answers, and I didn't get that big of a piece on the eventual production. But in retrospect, when I said there was no correlation between Planet X and the Mayan calendar, I was absolutely wrong for the right reasons. Reason why I said I didn't see a correlation was there was no data to substantiate that. I don't, interpreting the Bible or talking to Zeta aliens or whatever. I mean, who can duplicate those methods? I always like to find things that my audience can say, fine, I'm going to take what Marshall says and I'm going to bet it. I'm going to go back to his source and see how he came to his conclusions. And that's more the scientific method. And that's a personal hot button for me, because I did work in Y2K mitigation in the 90s, and I can tell you Y2K was a Titanic didn't hit the berg. And if they had actually revealed what the real crisis was all about, that insiders like me knew, I was doing Y2K stuff for Hewlett-Packard, it would have crashed the stock market. And then you have guys like Bill O'Reilly off with their heads. And I hate that kind of mockery after a non-event. The thing here is that our planet is not responding directly to Nemesis. Our planet is responding to our sun, which in turn is responding to Nemesis. And it has been for some time. A big reason for geoengineering spraying, chemtrail spraying, is to create global dimming, which is one of the reasons why temperatures are cooling when we're supposed to have global warming, and we have weather chaos. All right. All things being equal, we would be warmer right now all across the planet. And the geoengineering spraying, which is loading up the atmosphere with aluminum, is reflecting light back into space. And this is becoming a problem for astronomers as well. This is distorting their view of the skies. By 2013 or 2030, at the current rate, half of all infants born will be autistic. Autism rates are just skyrocketing because of the aluminum. So we're already in a very, very severe struggle. And we have this, essentially, it's untried terraforming, or they're just terraforming the planet. And this is a huge experiment, and and we're going to die. We're suffering as a result of it. People are dying from this because all these just massive amounts of chemicals they're spraying into the sky. And the interesting thing I find about it is that you can look up, see what they're doing, and how many people really look up, and how many of them want to believe what they're seeing. Very few. Very, very few. You ask most people, look up when you see a chemtrail jet passing overhead spraying, you go, that's chemtrail. And they go, what? And they shrug it and go on their way. So we are already being affected. We don't understand it because the media is very good at suppressing things. There are massive crop failures happening right now worldwide. But as long as we can go to Costco and the shelves are full, who cares? It's a moot point. On the other hand, there will come a point when, in my mind, I can see people wheeling carts up and down the aisles of Costco and somebody screaming, "Oh my God, they're out of Tabasco! We're all going to die!" And by the time that happens, it's a little too late. And so, yeah, we're already feeling the effects. I believe that later this year, the question being, and you're asking, when are we all going to see it? Well, I'm documenting this. We're already seeing, okay? You look at my Planet X system update number 4, and I post there where at the 3 o'clock position relative to the sun and the horizon, we have multiple sightings of PX objects in the same location and in different parts of the globe and at altitude from commercial jets. And I present all of that. And it's a 3-parter, and that's the one part of that's the second part of that series, and it's the least popular. I mean, people, you say, when are you going to see it? They're not interested in seeing it. And I hear people all the time go, well, when am I going to see it with my own 2 eyes? And I have been criticized for saying, if you ask that question, you're stupid and you deserve to die. And people really, just, they get incensed. If you're doing that, and you say, when am I going to see it with my own 2 eyes? When you do see it, the first thing you're going to do is turn on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, or any of the corporatist media outlets, because you're not going to trust yourself to figure it out on your own. And Their talking heads are going to tell you it's just going to be an interesting celestial show. Don't worry about it. Stay calm. And people are going to go, okie dokie. I'm not going to do anything about it. And they're going to do that because that's what they want to hear. That's what they want to believe. When that happens, that is going to be your harbinger sign that this will be the last window of opportunity to get yourself into a survivable situation. That's it. That's your last harbinger. Now, when they come back with the same official talking heads and they go, well, you know, we've had all of these meteor and asteroid events and blah, blah this, blah, blah that. And we didn't really factor all that in or properly calculate it, but we've updated our models, and our modeling tells us that, well, it's going to be a little bumpy, but it's nothing we can't get through if we just pull together and stay calm. When you hear that, then right after that is going to come the dying. Okay. So that's the window of event that you're looking for, is what kind of lies are we going to get on CNN and Fox and MSNBC? They're all going to lie to us blatantly. And they've got to do it. You know, he who has the gold makes the rules, golden rule. But, you know, what Ed Dames was saying is November, we see it. Now, when we see it, and if we're going to see this object as large as the moon in 2017, then my estimate of it is that this will be the phase when the Planet X system is passing overhead. You know, it's going to pass overhead and we're going to go underneath it. What that means is the pole shift is going to come about 11 months or so later when we come back around the sun. And by that time, you know, Nemesis is going to be approaching the ecliptic. And so 2017 is when what we're going to be experiencing will be impact events, steep increases in volcanism. You know, I think it's all eyes on Italy. This is when we're going to have more of a problem with, you know, we want to look at, particularly around the Naples area, that's going to be telling. But we're going to have volcanoes going off. We're going to have ash in the air that's going to block air traffic. When you see the, on the Pacific Rim, the western edge along the, you know, those states in that area, and we're already seeing ash plumes that are closing air traffic. That's already happening right now. It's going to be a sufficient uptick that it is going to affect the world economy. A lot of people don't recall, but on 3/11, when the earthquake and tsunami that resulted in the Fukushima incident happened, you know, the country had to shut down its JIT factories, just-in-time manufacturing. And so consequently, other production lines around the world were not able to receive the components they needed to build what they needed, so they had to shut down. So there was a global consequence, because we manufacture products a little bit here, a little bit there, and we snap them together. And it's, you know, this is really what I call a jumbo jet manufacturing world. You have these big 747 cargo liners, and that's it. Load them up, and they haul off and take the parts over, and it cost justifies. And that is going to shut down because of air traffic. Another aspect of that is the balance of power in that region of the world is going to shift completely away from the United States in favor of China, because our military presence there, we project power through naval aviation and land-based bombers, and jet engines and volcanic ash do not live well together. So you cannot operate. That's it. That ash will just tear up the engines. And on the other hand, the Chinese military, their principal naval model is based on the Soviet model, which relies more on submarines and missile cruisers. And these this war strategy is invulnerable to the ash. I mean, these ships can, you know, have no problem moving through the ash, and rockets have no problem moving through the ash, ballistic missiles, and so forth. So that'll ground us. And once we're no longer able to project power through the air, then that's it. China will just swoop in and control the region. That will have severe economic impacts for us here. Shopping at Walmart is not going to be such a wonderful experience anymore. And so these are the consequences that we're looking coming ahead this year, that we're going to have all these signs, indicators, economic issues. Economic issues are in turn going to drive destabilizing political situations and wars. That's going to happen. But there will come a point where we begin having a sufficient number of collapses, and all it takes is one really good impact event, and that is the world changer. Now, in my book, Being in It for the Species, I go through in very precise detail of an impact event that occurs in the eastern Atlantic, and just short of the continental shelf going into Europe. And so this is a large impactor. It goes down to the subsea floor, and it hits in a place off the coast of Western Europe that has catastrophic events in a series of ways. That impactor, first it hits, and it happens to hit in an area where we have a nexus of subsea fiber optic cables. So that immediately shuts down a good part of global communications right there, just with that impact. But then the impact is going to send tsunamis in two directions. Now, behind it and in front of it, the one in front of it obviously going to be bigger. That's going to hit northern Africa and Europe, and it'll be devastating. And you're going to have cities inland like Paris and London that are going to flood because, you know, the water is going to come back up the rivers. Meanwhile, you're going to have all the ejecta that's going to be falling as far east as Germany, and that's going to be causing innumerable fires and problems. Then you're going to have the rearward tsunami that hits the east coast of the United States from Newfoundland down, and that is going to be a 1-2 punch, actually, because that impact event in that area is going to La Cumbre de Vija, the volcano and on Las Palmas, and the western flank of that volcano back during World War II separated, and so it's really primed for a slide. The flank would slide into the ocean. That would also create a massive tsunami event, and so the shock that would radiate out from the impact event would set that off. So in the United States, we would have a 1-2 punch. We'd have a tsunami coming in from the impact itself, and then about 8 hours later, we would have another tsunami, or even sooner, that would be coming in from the collapse of the west flank of that volcano. And the east coast, from we're talking about from Newfoundland to all the way down to Miami, it just is hammered, and there's going to be huge loss of life with that. The event that is going to let us know that we're on that catastrophic timeline will be what I call the winter of ash, because there's going to be so much ash in the sky, it's going to dim the skies, and it's going to give us cold weather. It's going to ground aircraft. Wherever you're at in America, you'll get up in the morning and you go out and there'll be a thin film of volcanic ash on your car. And all of that's going to be coming over from the Pacific Rim. And we're going to have, the thing about the Planet X system is it's pushing stuff in front of it as well as dragging stuff behind it. And one of the things that I explain in my video programs is that you have objects in space, you have asteroids in space that are in benign orbits, okay? Nowhere, no way, no how are they going to cross the Earth. I mean, there's no problem. However, Nemesis is coming through our system like the mother of all cue balls. And it's knocking everything, just think about, you see somebody who's really good at playing pool and they break the rack, and balls going everywhere. Well, that's what's happening. And that's the reason why, I believe we're going to see super bolide events, and then we're going to, all it's going to take is one really good impact event, and that is the massive game changer. People are going to, they're going to sit and they're going to say, what am I going to see it with my own two eyes? The right question, the smart question, the intelligent question is, when will I believe that what I am seeing with my own two eyes represents a clear and present danger?
What the fuck?
You know, they're saying it takes a long time for it to happen. Well, there's a lot of long time things happening real quick lately these days. Ring of Fire is really popping off. We're seeing, I'm monitoring things. I mean, right now, Nemesis is coming through our system like the mother of all cue balls. And it's knocking everything. You know, just think about, you know, you see somebody who's really good at playing pool and they break the rack, you know, and balls going everywhere. Well, that's what's happening. And that's the reason why, you know, I believe we're going to see super bolide events, and then we're going to, you know, all it's going to take is one really good impact event, and that is the massive game changer.
Looking out into the vastness of the universe, the greatest mystery is right here, right under our feet. The ultimate aim of all science, to penetrate the unknown. These are the stories that will make you say, what the fuck?
The last thing I did was in my signs video in last year, and in that what I'm doing is I am forecasting that we are going to have a super bolide event first quarter of this year. And the interesting thing is that I just got in the data for December, and man, it just keeps, you know, the bad news just keeps coming. The data that we saw was through the month of November, and everything is just upticking. It has been for the last 3 years. Actually, what we show, if you the video is signs number 13, meteor warning for first quarter 2017. And so what I really wanted to do with this was I like to give people news they can use, and as opposed to straight validation reporting. What I call validation reporting is, look at this, look at that, 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 look at that, look at this, look at this, look at that, and it goes on, and you know what I mean? It's almost like a Facebook addiction.